Thank you, Jonas. Good morning, god morgon. So I'm here to talk to you about Immunicum. Immunicum is a company that operates in the field of oncology, cancer, but a very particularly innovative area that is the immuno-oncology. And immuno-oncology is the area where a lot of the developments in the last 4 or 5 years have happened. And basically is the sector that wants to use the patient's own immune system to attack and kill the tumor cells. And that's where most of the big developments and impact on survival of patients have been happening. So let me tell you about Immunicum. So we are a listed company. We are in the NASDAQ main market since now a little bit over 1 year. And we have a product that is a cell-based product, and I will explain you how that works. But this is a very particular product because it's what we call off-the-shelf, so ready to be administered whenever needed. And we treat patients injecting these cells from healthy donors into the tumor and initiate this reaction of activating the patient immune system. We're already quite advanced in terms of clinical trials. If you are more or less familiar with the development phase 2, so we are going to have phase 2 data from a study in kidney cancer now the 3rd quarter this year, so very exciting for us. But we have a very extensive safety data from more than 90 patients in several indications. And one of the things that is beneficial and the key differentiation for our product ilixadencel is the excellent safety. The side effect profile that we see in patients is fever, because we are inducing inflammatory response. So very well tolerated and very important when we are going to combine our product with other classes because now today is accepted that the future of treating patients with cancer has to be combinations of classes of drugs with different mechanisms of action. We also have quite a robust production process. We currently produce in Germany and transferring now to a bigger producer that will be possible to produce for us or a partner in commercial scale. We have been in touch with both the European regulatory authorities, the FDA, that is the US European authorities, several times. We have quite differentiated too. We already have, again, the agreement from the FDA, the US regulatory approvals for running studies in the US, what we already did with our most advanced study, the phase 2, and the new study that we have initiated. And also in November, we announced a collaboration with 2 big pharmas, Pfizer and Merck Germany, Merck KGaA, where they will supply us their product that is one of these products in the immuno-oncology space, it's called the checkpoint inhibitor, to combine with our product ilixadencel in the new study that we have just initiated in the US. We also very successful raised 350 million krona now in December. A little bit more than that was through directed issue with big and strong institutional investors with a very long-term perspective. And I will tell you about that. And that money, together with the cash that we have, funds the company towards the end of 2021, so quite an extended runway. And this carries the company through the different value inflection points that are excellent points for our shareholders to get potential return on their investment based on this data. We have quite an extensive experienced team that we have basically been assembling in the company in the last couple of years. And in terms of what you look at the profile, the projects in the company, you have of course the lead compound is ilixadencel. So the kidney cancer is the study that we are going to have data 3rd quarter. We have published the data in liver cancer. We have another small study. There's an orphan disease, so very rare, in collaboration with Karolinska that we are going to publish the results mid this year. And the new study that we have initiated with the checkpoint inhibitors that are the leading class now in treating cancers in head and neck cancer, lung cancer, and stomach cancer. And then we have a couple of other projects in preclinical, but this, of course, this is our focus. So, this is a complex graph, but think about it as, what we call the cancer immunity cycle. This is how the cancer develops and how the body reacts against the cancer cells and how the different treatments fall in place. So I normally use the example of the cancer is like a castle. So the cancer creates a fortress and has the defenses against the patient immune system. So you have a class of drugs on this side called the anti-immunosuppressants, means that they block the defenses of the tumor cells against the immune system. So think about that, you have this castle, and the checkpoint inhibitors are the ones that are going to destroy the gate to the castle. So that's their job. Of course, then you need an army to go through these gates and destroy the castle. And that's the big problem. In most of the cases, the patient immune system is not activated, so you don't have this army in strength and in numbers. So we provide that other side of the equation. Basically, we activate the patient system so you have all these cells, strength, and in numbers that go through the gate and destroy the castle. And the most important for our product is you not only destroy the main castle, but you also destroy the metastases, small fortresses, spread through the body. So we complement the activity. They destroy the defenses. We activate in combinations. You have a better effect than the two drugs alone. So how do we do that? As I mentioned to you, we use cells that are taken from donors. These are like blood donors, so nothing too special. It's just we activate these cells with a cocktail to make them extremely pro-inflammatory. So think about that, although it's not a vaccine, they are going to induce a reaction inside the tumor, like when you have a vaccine. You have it's swollen, it's red, so you create an inflammatory response. And the big differentiation is that the product, these cells are frozen. So basically you can keep them in the hospital pharmacy. We already passed 3-year shelf life, so after 3 years the cells are still, when brought back to life, they are still active, so ready to be administered. And this is a key differentiation when you want to treat these patients. One donor gives us about 100 of these vials, so we treat up to 50 patients from one donor. So this is another big differentiation. It's a relatively simple manufacturing process, so in terms of cost of producing, has no impact on margin. So very well established manufacturing process, but that now we started making investments to develop what we call a commercial process, so that then we can, or a partner can proceed with the regulatory studies and coming later on to the market. So again, complex graph, but basically think about it. When the patient needs, and we treat most of the times with 2 doses, 2 injections into the tumor. These cells that were frozen and we put them back to life and then we inject them, they are going to induce this inflammatory response. Recruit the patient's own immune cells to the site of the injection. They kill some of the tumor cells and release what we call like a barcode. It's the neoantigens. It's a barcode that is specific for that patient, for that tumor. The product, you can use it regardless of the type of tumor. If the patient is always the same. But when you inject it, then becomes personalized for that patient, for that tumor. Then the cells take this barcode to the lymph nodes, to the ganglia, and then educate what we call the T cells, killer T cells, that are the ones that then spread through the whole body, take this barcode and say, okay, this is a cancer cell, let's destroy it. So you have not only the effect at the place, the tumor where you inject, but also through the whole body. And this is, again, very important. So we have this first study. We already concluded this in 2012. This is what you see. This was in patients that had, in addition to the kidney cancer, they also had metastasis and was newly diagnosed. So we inject. It's like doing a biopsy, so nothing too complicated. This is here what you see, the normal, the dark spots are these killer T cells. As you see, not a lot. This is one of the big challenges. So these are images from all the same patient. You see the massive infiltration of these killer T cells that were trained in the lymph nodes, then come to the primary tumor. You see the healthy tissue just outside is the normal reaction, but also very important in this case, we also saw that this also was in the metastasis. This was, as a matter of fact, a lung metastasis. So it's a distance metastasis. These cells spread through the whole body. But importantly, again, this was a small number of patients, 11 patients. What you can see is that this blue line is what you expect will be the survival of these patients treated with the standard of care, 14 to 16 months. So just a little bit over 1 year. In our study, we reached 4-year survival, so that is triple, and we still had patients passing the 5-year, and in January last year, where we could collect the data, we still had 3 patients alive passing the 5-year mark. So not a lot of patients, but quite an extended survival, and again, excellent safety. One of those patients is this one. He had of course, the kidney tumor. He had the lung metastasis, liver metastasis, and 4 brain metastasis. Normally, with the standard of care, there's nothing to the brain metastasis. Very short. This patient was expected to survive 6 months. In a presentation that we're giving to shareholders last October, this gentleman stand up and say, "I'm this patient." So we know that he is still alive after 66 months. And having a normal life. And this is showing the benefit of the combinations. Based on this data, we initiated a bigger study, the one that I mentioned to you. We are going to communicate the top-line results in the 3rd quarter. 88 patients, 58 of them combining the standard of care with our cells, the other one with the standard of care alone, that is Sutent. So we can compare the effects and the safety between the groups. 8 European countries and the US, very important data for us. Basically, this is going to prove that we bring, in a combined study, an improvement over the standard of care alone. And this is the type of data that a lot of the potential partners, companies that we are discussing are waiting. We also had very good results in the liver cancer study that we would want to move forward. But the big study that, as I mentioned, we just initiated, the FDA cleared the protocol last year. A phase 1B is in combination with Keytruda. Keytruda is the biggest seller, sells $12 billion a year. So it's a lot of usage. So 21 patients, so we can see the safety of the combination, but also some initial indications of efficacy. And when we move to the phase 2, then these 3 indications will run in parallel. So we will have 3 studies. So already during 2019, we are going to have some of the initial data from the study. And also very exciting data in preclinical studies in mice, but showing that really we have potential to combine with other classes of drugs. You can see here, basically we got the 4 EP fund, the second EP fund, Gladiator, Adrigo, Nordic Cross, joining some of, a couple of our existing shareholders. So now, about 40% of the company is in the hands of, institutions, or of course the usual Avance and Nordnet. So, as I mentioned, this cash, will fund the company. So at the end of in December, we have a total of 444 million SEK in terms of cash that will fund the company towards the end of 2021. And this is very important, and was also very important also for the EP funds, that basically we have the cash to cross several value inflection points. The big one, of course, is the results of the phase 2. This can be transformational for the company. But of course, we also have the initial data from the new big study, very important study. So it's going to be a very, very crucial year for us, 2019. And now you see that the reason why this is important is because there's been a lot of activity of big pharmas acquiring companies operating in our part of the sector there, you know, in biotechs as primers, with very big acquisitions done in 2018. So, you know, in summary, I think as an investment case, you know, we are very well positioned now as a company. We have a very clear strategy. All the studies are running. We are going to have very, very soon very important results on the data that can, again, as I mentioned, be transformational for the company. We have the new study, very important, running, and we are going to get the data. We have long-term funding and very strong investors behind the company. And, you know, a very clear strategy. We are presenting the company now, you know, not only in Scandinavia and Sweden, but also in the US, in Asia, and in Europe. Our majority of our shareholders are still in Sweden, but we want to diversify that because I think the company is now becoming more and more well-known outside of Sweden. And we participate a lot in investor meetings, but also partnering and conferences. So, you know, in terms of the position where we are as a company and as an investor case, we are in a very strong position for a biotech. And also, you know, we have quite a differentiation. This is a very innovative field, as I mentioned to you. You know, the two of the drugs that operate in this field, as I mentioned to you, the Keytruda received the Nobel Prize for Medicine now in December. So as you can see, this is not only rewarded by the market, but also in terms of science, this is the most innovative field. So I want to thank you, and now I hope we have some minutes for questions.
Thank you, Carlos. We do. Yeah, so very exciting year for Immunicum. I would say the most exciting part short term would be the MERECA study, the readout in Q3. Provided that goes well, the next step, because you would have to do a bigger study then after that, right?
Yes. So, you know, then will be what is called a pivotal or a regulatory study that, you know, we are already planning not because necessarily we are going to be the ones running it, but, you know, we need, as a company, and we have been making sure that we don't lose time in the development. This is very important because if we're going to partner, you know, Elixir and Cell with a big pharma, they are going to look at how many years can they have exclusivity in the market. You know, we have patents and all that. So the more time we save now, the more time they have in the market, the highest is the value. So all these investments that we are making are an investment in value, in increasing the value of Elixir and Cell for potential partnering discussions. So, you know, we prepare ourselves for that, but of course, you know, there is a lot of interest from potential partners. So, you know, we don't know what is going to happen. But again, we are in terms of cash, we are in a position of strength, so we can negotiate for the best deal for the company and the shareholders.
And then speaking of potential partners, seems logical that if the study results, great results, then you already have a couple of partnerships.
You know, yeah. So, well, the collaboration with Pfizer, that of course, and Merck KGaA that are, you know, in this field, again, is very important for us because as they give us the avelumab, that is the checkpoint inhibitor, allows us to extend this big Iliad clinical study to Europe, you know, because we don't want to pay for the checkpoint inhibitors. They cost in the US $150,000 per treatment. So this, instead of running this only in the US, we can expand to Europe, so what will help. But also very importantly is a scientific validation. You know, Pfizer has only about 6-7 collaborations of this kind. So they are very selective in terms of who they collaborate with. So we have, believe me, it took a long time. We had to present, you know, the data because they don't just give the drug, you know, to any company. So we have a scientific validation. They see there is a rationale to combine and believe in the data, but also, of course, operationally allows us to involve centers in Europe, what, of course, is beneficial for us and for running the study.
And you mentioned that you are out presenting Immunicum outside Scandinavia as well, also to international investors. And you finished a really quite a big financing round in December, 350 million kronor. So you are financed through these phase 2 studies. And why is it important to bring in new investors at this point?
So, you know, you need to differentiate between investors. You have the big funds, you know, that, as I say, you know, normally invest minimum 100 million krona, you know. So we have been in touch with those, you know, and you need to meet with them several times and along the time, because they are the ones that say, we tell them we are going to do this, and then they wait and see did they deliver it or not. So it's important to keep that. But my more recent efforts have been more in terms of investors that what we call invest in the secondary market. So they will buy shares. And I think that is important, that, you know, the more investors are interested in Immunicum, in investing, the more trading there is, of course, the more value you bring to the stock. And also, you know, when you start having investors from the US, Europe, and Asia into the stock, you know, this creates visibility, creates, again, spreads more the word, and is a benefit to our current shareholders, you know, that at the moment, as I said, you know, are primarily in Sweden.
We're going to invite questions from the audience.
For this readout during the third quarter, for that to be considered as a success, what needs to be shown?
So we, for a biotech and for an exploratory phase 2, that is what the study is, we already have the benefit that normally you don't include a comparative arm. So we already have a comparative arm. So we have the combination with Sutent, and we have Sutent alone. And we have 18 months follow-up because we are going to look at survival. So you basically need to show that there is a clinical benefit, and you bring additional in terms of survival, what we call overall survival between the groups. I also have to say that, you know, the survival doesn't finish at 18 months. You know, these patients continue to live, so we need to continue following them. But we are going to look at overall survival between the groups, survival at 18 months, what we call progression-free survival. We are going to look at infiltration, you know, like the image that you saw there. Do we have this infiltration and the differences between the groups in terms of the, you know, these T cells coming into the primary tumor? So there is a lot of endpoints that we're going to look at. So, you know, we need to see that there is a clinical benefit, you know, that you see a difference between the groups. This is not, you know, as I said, you know, clarify, this is not a powered study for statistical significance, but that is the only impact of that is that it's not what we call an approval study, you know. So it's a very important data. But then we need to run a bigger study, like is the normal process, you know. But the data can already support then moving into what will be a bigger study, what we call a pivotal study. And let's not forget that, you know, Marek is very important, you know, the data, you know, the study, but we also have the Iliad, and the combination with checkpoint inhibitors have a very strong potential. So as a company, basically what we did was to diversify the risk. We spread the risk. So, you know, we have Marek, but we have Iliad. So the data in both studies are very important. So it's not the company, it's not just Marek. It's now more diversified in terms of the risk. But Marek is going to be very important to prove that we bring a benefit over the Sutent, that is the standard of care alone. I don't know if that answered. Yeah.
This seems to be a very wide field. Can you tell us how specific is your patent protection, and when does it expire?
Thanks for the question. It's a very important question. As you say, it's a very busy field. But when you start narrowing it down and understand, you know, we are the only ones with this approach. So, you know, there are a lot of companies who are working, for instance, with oncolytic virus. You know, there are dozens of companies doing that. So we are the only ones operating, you know, with this mechanism of action. We have patents, you know, to 2031, and we are filing additional patents. But one thing that is important to understand in this field is that stronger than the patents is the fact that we are a cell-based product, what is called Advanced Therapeutic Medicinal Product, ATMP. And this means that even if we didn't have patents, what we have, any other company that will wanted to use the process that we do, they will need to repeat all the data. They will not refer to our data. So basically, they will need to start from scratch. And so creates additional hurdles for us when we talk with the authorities. But again, we already got the okays from both the European and the FDA, but then creates a very high hurdle for any other company to work in this field. So we have the patents and the fact that we are a cell-based product, so creates an additional protection.
Yeah, the market cap today is 80 million US roughly. What was the market cap when you last had your last capital injection? Roughly?
Basically, you know, if you do the proportion, will be, you know, the share price is pretty much the same. And then, of course, we had the injection, so we increased from 51 million shares to 92 million shares. But again, you know, I don't comment on the share price. I think, you know, that part, as I said, you know, I cannot control. What we can control as a company, that we deliver everything. And if you look to the past, last year, everything that we said we were going to deliver, we delivered. So it was a very successful year for Immunicum. We closed the enrollment of this study. That's why we can now have the results. We got certification from the European authorities for the quality of the production and the preclinical data. You know, we enter into the collaboration. We brought quite big, important and strong institutional investors. We are listed beginning of last year. So as the things that we can control, you know, we deliver on everything that we said. And, you know, now, of course, there's the expectation for the data. So, you know, we'll see how that plays.
And one other question. You have 2 injections in the tumors, right? That's how you treat these patients. What's the rationale for that? Is it common sense how you treat this?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. So we treat, depending on the tumors, we treat with 2 or 3 injections. You know, so in the liver, because you know we were also exploring, you know, can be 2 or 3, and the rationale, you know, you don't need more, because our activity, we are not killing the cells with the injection. We are just initiating this process. So, you know, the first injection starts inducing this process. You give a second one to reinforce that. But then the cells from the donor are destroyed in 2-3 days. So it's the patient's own immune cells that then are going to attack the tumor. For instance, we did now showed in a poster, we did a study in mice, you know, combining with a new class of drugs, you know, called immune enhancers, where, you know, some of the animals, we extended survival. You know, some animals cleared the tumor cells, and then we re-injected those animals with tumor cells again to try to develop a tumor. Nothing. So basically, they created immune memory, and that's what we want to basically do also with patients. That's the mechanism of action. That's the hope, is that these T cells, these immune cells, then that barcode that they see for the first time, then every time they see that barcode, okay, they remember. And the big advantage is that, of course, sometimes the patient then has a relapse some years later, where this barcode then may be different. You just reinitiate the system. And the big advantage, as I said, you know, is the safety. Normally, you don't get too excited with phase 1b data, you know, the new study, because it's primarily safety. But if we show in this new study the same safety profile that we have now in more than 90 patients, we will be the first product that, when combined with the checkpoint inhibitor, is not going to add toxicity. And this is going to be already a very important differentiation. So even that fact is very important, because most of the combinations become additional toxicity. And some patients, in some combinations, 50% of the patients cannot even tolerate the treatment. So that is more important than the usual.
I think we have to cap it there. Lots of interesting questions. And of course, you will be able to ask more questions to Carlos after when we finish. And that's the cue, I think, for today. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, everybody.